The year is 2007. The average age of a McLaren fan is about 50 years older than it is nowadays, and there were far more words it was socially acceptable to call them. But as far as the championship battle was concerned, things were remarkably similar. With 7 rounds remaining, rookie Lewis Hamilton leads the championship with 70 points. Having just won the European Grand Prix, teammate Fernando Alonso is hot on his heels with 68. Ferrari, despite having a pretty good start, are much further behind, however. Felipe Massa and Kimi Raikkonen on 59 and 52 points respectively. This very much looked like a 2-horse fight for the win. But Lewis Hamilton did not win the title that year, and neither did Fernando Alonso. As McLaren broke apart in their best impression of the Colombia disaster, Kimi went on a string of podiums and wins to put himself in contention as the sport head to its final round in Brazil. One final dominant victory, plus more trouble for McLaren, and Kimi Raikkonen would cross the line as the 2007 Formula One world champion, and by just a single point no less. And all of a sudden, this is beginning to sound rather familiar. We're back in 2025 with 7 rounds and 3 sprints to go, and for a while now we've been focused on this inter-team battle between Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. But in the last couple of races, that tide has begun to shift. Enter Max Verstappen. After a torrid first half of the season, the Dutchman has now won 2 races on the bounce. All the while, at the same time, McLaren's early dominance has appeared to waver, making you wonder if just maybe this championship battle might have a third wheel after all. Let's take a look at this from a numbers standpoint. In 2007, with 7 rounds still to go, the gap between Hamilton and Raikkonen was 18 points. In 2025, the gap between Piastri and Max Verstappen is 69 points. Because of course it is. Those numbers on their own don't tell the whole story, however, with the point system being radically different across both seasons and race victories meaning a lot more nowadays than they did back then. Instead, let's look at the percentage differences. Hamilton and Raikkonen sat at 29.51 back in 07. The Finn's subsequent comeback is now recognised as one of the biggest in the sport's history, so returning to 2025, and the percentage difference is just 23.83% between Verstappen and Piastri. Does that make it easy? Well, of course not. But this title battle might be more on than you might think. So, starting from the Singapore Grand Prix, if Verstappen goes on to win every single sprint and race till the end of the season, with Piastri coming home second, Verstappen will not win the world title. But hold on, if Norris finishes second, and Piastri can only manage third in every event, Verstappen does make it. At the very final race, no less, the pair going into Abu Dhabi equal on points. Hang on a minute, that also sounds familiar all of a sudden. Now, are we going to get the exact same podium for the remainder of the season? I mean, of course not. But are McLaren even consistent podium challengers anymore? Baku certainly skewed matters, with the track favouring the DRS train and Oscar Piastri's hopes and dreams, but it certainly exposed the weaknesses within that McLaren car. A machine once thought to be unbeatable at the start of the year. Even in practice, we began to see the cracks start to form, both drivers encountering problems as they attempted to dial in, Norris on the setup front and Piastri in the, racing line department. Regardless, the standard advantage between the Papaya pair and the rest of the grid didn't seem as big as usual, hurting Lando in qualifying when the bottle job bottled his lap and found himself down in P7, as opposed to maybe surviving onto the second row had this happened at the beginning of 2025. You could probably argue that the rain played a factor in this as well, but if you can't argue that McLaren have got slower in Baku, well, perhaps it's Red Bull who have gotten faster. The upgrade brought to Monza was the equivalent of introducing a British tourist in the 1970s to Google Translate. They were finally able to understand the RB21, and that immediately turned into a dominant victory around the Temple of Speed, making everyone wonder if it was 2023 again. I wonder then if that means my hairline's come back. I mean, never mind, it was worth a try. Verstappen once again looked dominant last time out in Baku, and granted, your closest competition, being Carlos Sainz and the Williams, will certainly exaggerate things, but this is no doubt a turning point for that Red Bull team in 2025. If they can keep up that form for the remainder of the year, and well, you already know what might happen. Add in some potential McLaren disruption in the form of Mercedes and Ferrari, and that 69-point gap could be whittled down quicker than you realise. I do just wonder, when it comes down to the end of the season, if all 3 of these drivers might just find themselves ruining missed opportunities throughout the year. Piastri's crashes in Baku, or Verstappen's terror attack on Russell in Spain, or Norris pretty much everywhere in 2025. So while the Red Bull driver may have openly counted himself out of this championship a few months ago, the Dutchman is still very much in contention. But before you all get excited, let's pour a little cold water on the whole situation. First up, Monza and Baku are very similar tracks. Both demand high top-end speeds, and when you think of it that way, it should come as no surprise that Max was so dominant across both of them. Next up is Singapore, a circuit far more demanding for a car's overall downforce, and the track that's become a bit of a Red Bull worst nightmare in years gone by. That said, it's also been a layout notorious for telling the dominant team of the era to go and promptly themselves. So if we chuck science out the window and instead focus on the sport's long history, well, maybe it'll be McLaren on the struggle bus instead. After that, we have a mix of tracks. Kota and Mexico are typically Red Bull territory. Then you have the likes of Qatar or Abu Dhabi that may well favour the McLarens. Then you've got Brazil that could go either way, depending on whatever the heavens decide to do. Provided Red Bull really are back, we could well see them and McLaren jostle for top dog throughout the remainder of the year. Essentially, it'll be the complete opposite of what happened in 2024, when McLaren were the ones trying to play catch-up, and well, Norris didn't have the consistency to really mount much of a challenge when it counted. But Max Verstappen isn't Lando Norris, and that could really be the difference maker here. This is already a guy who's won 4 championships, one of which against the McLaren, and one of which against one of the best drivers this sport has ever managed to churn out. Compare that psychological experience to a Norris or Piastri, both fighting it out properly for the first time, and knowing that with the rule changes next year, this could be their one and only chance, and that's a bigger advantage than most give it credit for. Even the previously stone-faced Piastri's confidence appeared to waver throughout the Azerbaijan Grand Prix weekend, and it remains to be seen just how good he is at bouncing back from that, or whether he'll spiral into a deep dark F1 depression that takes him on a scenic tour of the World Tech Pro barriers. You've then got the other advantage on Max's side, that being his teammate Yuki Tsunoda. I bet you that's the first time that sentence has been said all year. Since getting the Red Bull call-up 3 rounds into the championship, let's be honest, this guy's been a little bit shit. But the Monza upgrade seemingly was a turning point for the young Japanese driver as well. Back at his best performance by far to date, or maybe that second Red Bull is just good around there, who knows. Regardless, Yuki was able to take points away from the McLarens in Azerbaijan, and if he does find himself in the, albeit rare, scenario of being ahead of Max Verstappen, well, I'm sure he'll more than happily get out of the way, especially if he spots his boss Laurent Mekies on the pit wall with his contract and the paper shredder. Compare that to McLaren, whose drivers are, or at least should be, battling for their position on track, and if Verstappen does begin to become a factor, that inter-team infighting could well spell their downfall. Will they duke it out and take points away from each other as a result? Yuki could be that one extra car between themselves and Max Verstappen, and that points advantage could be pivotal come the end of the year. In conclusion, let's be real, the 2025 championship is most likely going to one of the McLaren pair, but until Verstappen is mathematically out of the equation, he could very much still pull off this miracle. Back in 07, Kimi Raikkonen overturned that 29% deficit with 7 rounds to go. In fact, that was a lie. The Finn still had a 17-point gap with 2 races left, and he still managed to pull it off. These things aren't over until they're over. Let me know what you think of it all down in the comments below, and if you're still here, well, you probably enjoyed this video, so a like and subscribe would really help me get closer to that 200k goal by the end of 2025. Big up to the members and patrons, they got to see this video early and can watch this unreleased one right now too. If that's something that you're interested in, well, all the links are down in the description below. I'll be back with that, or something else, soon. Until then, have a good one. Fun fact, this Kimi Raikkonen hat's actually signed by 2016 Renault driver Jolyon Palmer. That's a pretty useless bit of information, but I just wanted to extend this video long enough so it gets ads.